Welcome to Mama's Meals, a series where I show you what I feed my family. In this video, you'll follow me as I make these homemade pizzas. I am not a chef. This series is not about being perfect. It's a reflection of what I cook in my kitchen, and hopefully it will help you in your kitchen. Tonight we decided to have homemade pizza, so I made a cheese pizza, and I like to put a lot of toppings on my pizza. So let me take you through how I made this recipe. Ingredients and information on how to make this yourself will be in the description below, but I start by preheating the oven at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I start prepping the dough. So I am making the dough, the pizza dough, from scratch. I keep a jar of active yeast in my freezer, and I'm using this measuring spoon, where 1 scoop is equivalent to 1 pack of yeast that you would get at the store. So I'm doing a double recipe today. So I'm doing 2 scoops of that, adding in 2 teaspoons of sugar, and then I'm adding in the water. A tip that I got from one of my friends is to always use bottled water with your homemade breads. I then use the microwave to heat up 2 cups of water to between 100 and 110 degrees. If it's too hot, like it was in that last clip, you will kill the yeast. But if it's not warm enough, then your yeast won't foam up the way we need it to. So that temperature is very important. And the bottled water really does make a difference. I noticed that with our well water, which has a lot of minerals, my breads just wouldn't rise and it didn't taste the way I'd hoped it would. So once you mix those together, set a timer for 10 minutes. And while the yeast interacts with the sugar and the water, I'm laying out all of my ingredients. We have pizza sauce. I prefer mozzarella and provolone cheese, and all of my toppings. I like to utilize canned goods for toppings just because I can keep them in my pantry. And then I add spices and herbs to the crust. So we have a variety here. And I also decided to add tomatoes, which I forgot to include in that first clip. Now that I have my toppings laid out, I move to preparing my pans. I'm putting a little bit of cornmeal on each pan. I really like these pans. These are the grandma style pans from the King Arthur website. Highly recommend them. Not sponsored. Just really love these pans. I'm also preparing my pizza sauce. I'm using jarred pizza sauce, so you can use whatever red sauce you prefer, and just adding a little bit of sugar to it. Now it's been 10 minutes and you can see that the yeast has foamed up, which is exactly what we want. And I'm adding the flour and a pinch of salt to it. I highly recommend getting a flour that's designed for pizza dough. It makes a big difference. I used to use just all-purpose flour, and that works. It works fine. But the 00 pizza dough flour just has the right amount of gluten that allows for that pizzeria feel at home. So I initially mix the ingredients with a spoon, and then once it starts to get sticky, I put a little olive oil on my hands and I start to knead my dough. You don't need to spend a ton of time kneading. Just keep it in the bowl, spend a couple minutes getting it into a nice ball, and then let it rest for at least 5 minutes. Now I'm transferring all of my toppings into separate bowls, just mostly because it looks pretty on camera, but also now everything's out of a can, so it's easier to get onto the pizza. It's been 5 minutes. You can see that the ball of dough has risen slightly. It's a bit larger than it was. I split it into 2 because I'm making 2 pizzas, 1 cheese for my husband and my kids, and 1 with lots of delicious toppings for me. Put a ball of dough onto your pan and then spread it out with your fingers. Some people do this on the countertop and then transfer it to the pan. You are more than welcome to do that, but I find it easier to just do it directly in the pan. Then I pour a little bit of olive oil on top of the dough. I use a plastic bristled brush to spread the olive oil across the pizza dough. I especially try to focus on the outside crust because I like to put herbs onto the crust and the oil helps those herbs to stick. Finally, I am taking a fork and I am poking the top of the crust. This helps to prevent those large bubbles that you sometimes get when you cook your pizza in the oven. Once the dough is ready, I take our pizza sauce with a ladle and I spoon a couple spoonfuls of red sauce onto each pizza. That 1 jar of sauce is enough for our family to make 2 of these pizzas. So it's nice that we can use the entire jar in one go and you don't have a jar of leftover sauce sitting in your fridge for a couple weeks. Once the sauce is applied, we can start putting our toppings onto the pizza. So here is our cheese, our provolone cheese, and I'm also rubbing some garlic onto the crust. Now, you don't have to use red sauce. You know, if you want to make a pizza with goat cheese and balsamic glaze and tomatoes, go for it. I would suggest waiting to put the balsamic glaze on until after you pull the pizzas out of the oven, but you don't have to use red sauce. You can use whatever you want. So I've rubbed garlic onto the pizza crust. I've also sprinkled a little bit on top of the pizza. Here I am putting some Italian seasoning on both pizzas and the crust. You can use oregano, but I was out of plain oregano, so I just went with my Italian seasoning. Next, I'm starting to put the other toppings onto the second pizza. So the cheese pizza is ready. Now I'm putting some jarred jalapeno peppers, some red onions, some black olives. Now I will admit that fresh ingredients would be better, would probably taste better, but I like to keep a lot of these ingredients in our canned pantry. Even the ham I have is canned ham. I use it for pizzas and for quiches and other egg dishes. So if you're trying to make the best pizza ever, I would suggest using fresh ingredients, but it's more than okay to use what you have. And I find that canned ingredients work just fine and taste great and can even be more economical. So the final toppings that I put on my pizza were crushed pineapple and sliced cherry tomatoes. So there we are. Both of our pizzas are ready to go into the oven. Once the oven is preheated, go ahead and put your pizza into it. I am putting the pizza with the toppings on the top rack. So if you're going to make more than one pizza at a time in the same oven, I would put the one that is more dense up top because it will get crispier. At least in my oven it does. So if I were to put the cheese pizza on top, it would get overcooked while the other one would get undercooked on the bottom. So after about 15 to 30 minutes, you'll just have to keep an eye on it. The pizzas are ready. So when the cheese is bubbling and the crust is nice and golden brown, you can pull them out of the oven. Sometimes that top pizza, if you have a lot of toppings, will need a little bit more time. So you'll have to use your best judgment. And there you have it. That's how you make pizza at home. I've gotten a lot better at it over the course of the past couple of years, and I hope that you can make it at home too. It's not about being perfect. It's about making something fun and nice for your family with the ingredients that you have on hand. Making pizza at home saves our family money and also allows for an opportunity to have family bonding time. I hope it does the same for you. Thanks for watching. Bye.